Today, I want to talk to you guys about the i3 window manager, which is my new daily driver. I used to use KDE and I hacked it to behave like that other tiny window manager, but it just didn't quite get the job done. And then I discovered i3 and I absolutely fell in love. And today, I want to walk you through my config file and show you how I have things set up. Oh, and for the record, if you notice a change in the audio quality, that's because I switched over from using my blue Snowball Ice to a blue Yeti. So hopefully you guys can enjoy the better audio quality and the loudness of the audio quality as well. And with that being said, let's get into the desktop. So here we are at the desktop of my i3 window manager. I have a wallpaper set here using Nitrogen, which is a tool that you can use to set the wallpaper with a tiny window manager. I have just a crap ton of wallpapers here, and if you actually want to see all my wallpapers, I have them listed up in my GitLab. You can go and check them out there. Up here, I have the polybar, and I'll go over in another video what polybar is and how it works. But essentially, it's just a status line that shows various information that you set. So in my case, I have the kernel, the amount of memory usage, CPU utilization, the temperature of the CPU, available updates, downlink and uplink for my network, what network I'm connected to, the current weather, and the time. And then I have a taskbar over here. And then to the left here, I have the workspaces that I have. So currently, I'm just using 1, 2, and 8. Unlike in other tiny window managers like Xmonad, where you can see all the available workspaces you have, in i3 you can only see the ones you are either currently on or the ones that currently have things active in them, simply because you can have infinite workspaces in i3. But that's just the way it is. So enough about that. Let's get into the config and I can show you guys what it looks like. So go into Vim, go into i3, let's jump all the way up to the top, and I'm not gonna forget it. Zoom in so you guys can see it a little easier. So we start off the i3 config with the definitions section, which essentially just sets various things to be called later in the config. So mod 4, that's the super key. So I can just say for with the key bindings just mod, and that means super. Mod 1 for the alt key. And then my term for kitty. So if I want to say, hey, open up this application from the terminal, I can just say, my term and then what I want it to actually execute. Looking down here, then we have the key bindings tab set, and I'm not going to go over every single key binding, but essentially how this works, it's very easy to set up. You have bind system mod key for the super plus whatever key you want to set. So it can be the enter key, V, O, B, what have you. Execute, and then what is it executing? Is it executing terminal? If so, what is it executing within the terminal? Is it just an application? Is it a whole mess of things down here, like for Flatpak? What is it? What is it doing? It's really easy to set configs, or key bindings rather, here in i3. Unlike in other tiny window managers where there's a whole mess of code you have to do, you just say what 2 keys you want to hit, or 3 or 4, whatever the key code is you want. What is it that it executes, or what is it that you want it to do? Do you want it to execute something? And then what does it execute? Very simple, straightforward. It's actually quite nice. Now down here, change focus. So this essentially makes it so you can change the focus of the current window you're on. So if I open up a terminal here, I can just hit super left. It changes the focus window over to the left. Right, if I had another window open horizontally, I could change it down from there, but I'm not gonna have that open. This one's kind of useless for me. Workspace auto back and forth. So what this does is it allows you to go back and forth between the various workspaces you have on. But in my case, I don't need that because I have the key binding of Control, Super, and then right to go through the ones that you can see there. Here's OBS, a little behind the scenes, and then left to go back. So I don't really need the auto back and forth, but hey, it's there in case you guys want to use it and turn it on. And I'll have this config linked up in my GitLab before this video goes live. Toggle full screen. So you just hit super. Actually, in my case, I can just hit F11 and an application will go full screen. So if I bring up free to, which I've made a video about before, you just hit F11 and then the video goes full screen. Hit it again and it goes back to a tiling layout. Actually quite nice. So down here I have the layouts binded to a particular key binding. So let's say I have another window open. I can change the layout this from tiling over to tabs, so I can just kind of shift between them. And this is really useful if you have multiple windows open at the same time and you don't want them all cluttering up your screen. You can tab them out like this. You want to go back to the normal tiling layout, Super S, and you're right back to where you were. Tiling and floating, so you can actually make a window floating. So by doing Super Shift Space, I can take NeoVim here, or Space Vim, or whatever you want to call it, and turn it into a floating window. Then I can hit Super Right Mouse button and resize the window, then Super Left button to move the window around. If I want to bring it back to a tiling layout, I do Super Shift Space again, and it goes back to a normal tiling layout. Scratchpads are incredibly useful. So let's say you're working on this config file, but you want to add something to it from online, and you don't want to move this over to another workspace or do a tiling layout. You just want to quickly jump back into your config and add whatever it is you found online. Well, you can do that with a Scratchpad. So if you do Super Shift minus, it goes away. But it's not actually gone. It's gone into a Scratchpad, which is essentially an invisible workspace that you can access with Super minus at the drop of a hat. And then it brings up this small little window that you can make disappear and come back as you see fit. And let's say you were going over, the web browser and you wanted to do i3 config and you wanted to go over to the i3 user guide and you found something in here that was really useful and you wanted to add it. Well, you can just do Super minus, take the window, move it over, add in whatever you want to. When you're done, put it back into your Scratchpad. If you want to get rid of your Scratchpad, bring it up, Super Q closes the Scratchpad, and that closes any window you have currently open. Oh, and while I'm here, if you have multiple windows open, and instead of going through and closing them all one at a time, I have it set up so you can do Super Shift Q, which closes all windows. Other than that, these other key bindings are kind of basic and boring. For volume control, this makes it so whatever button it is that controls volume, in my case there are a couple buttons on the mouse, I can click them and it can turn up or down the volume. This is for down here for restarting i3. This is for dragging floating windows. As I showed before, you can mod and then left and drag, or mod and then right and resize. Mod Q kills the window, mod Shift Q kills all the windows, and that's how you would add it to your config if you wanted to add that yourself. In here in Workspaces, this is just really boring. This is all the workspaces that I have currently active, and this just shows you how to actually switch to a particular workspace. So if I did Super 2, I can move to the second workspace. If I did Super 1, I can go back to this one to toggle through the current workspaces that I have active. So I have 1 here and then 8 for OBS. Go back over here and shift back and forth between the various workspaces as I see fit. If I wanted to move a window to a particular workspace, I can do Super Shift 2, which moves it to 2, and then I can move it back Super Shift 1 to 1. If I wanted to move a window to a workspace but not jump to that workspace, I can do Super Alt 2, so I'm still on 1, but NeoVim is now on Workspace 2. If I wanted to go back, Super Shift 1, and we're back. Here, open applications on specific workspaces. So I have this set up so that if I have something like OBS or Zoom and I don't want to open it up and have it immediately take up my screen space, I want it to open up on a separate workspace and not have to think about it. That's how you can do this here. Now, this right here, switch workspace, let me uncomment that so you can see that a little easier. Switch to workspace with urgent window automatically. So if you again bring up OBS or Zoom and it immediately demands your attention, normally the window manager will move your current focus workspace over to whatever it is you open. So in this case, workspace 9 for Zoom. So if I went in, let's go in and save this real quick. and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so we're gonna go into Rofi, which is an application launcher. I launch Zoom, and it will not only open it up in Workspace 9, but it will immediately take me to Workspace 9. But if I comment out this line, save it, reload i3, and then open Zoom again, it will open Zoom but not automatically take me to that workspace. It's just opened up here in 9. So if we move back over to 9, you can see Zoom right there. Down here for floaters, these are just the various applications that will load as a floating window rather than a tile window. The only one on here worth mentioning is nitrogen. So if I wanted to go over to an empty workspace and then set the wallpaper, I can do that really easily by just clicking on something, hitting apply, and then just moving it out of the way really quickly to see what it looks like, and move it back. If I wanted to shift back over to the wallpaper I was currently using, I can see what that looks like really quickly, and then once I'm happy, close the window and move on with my day. Modes are essentially, modes here are essentially a way to be able to turn one key binding into multiple. So for example here, if you didn't have this commented out, you could hit mod 0 and then any one of those following letters and you would complete the command. So mod 0L will lock the screen, mod 0S would suspend the system. I don't need that because I use Rofi to do those various things. I can hit Super X and have it lock, log out, suspend, reboot, resume, or shut down rather, sorry about that. Resizing the windows, I can already do that with the mouse. So if I have, say, another window open, I can hit Super Right and then it resizes the window. So I really don't need a mode for that, but if you wanted to, you could uncomment that and put that into your config. And then the other mode here is for the various gaps and layouts that you have set up for your config. Here is the layout section, and in here I essentially just set everything to look a certain way for i3. So what font will they use? Oh, while I'm here, this is actually a really important thing if you're trying to use tab layout. See, normally if I go into here, your config will have a font size of, let's say, 13. Okay, we're going to save it and we're going to restart it. Now I'm going to open up a second window and I'm going to switch over to tab layout, and watch what happens. It automatically names the window you're looking at, and for me, that's not something I necessarily want because I already have that information over here from Polybar. So to get rid of that, go back to a tiled layout, quit out of there. What you want to do is set your font to 0, then save, reload. Then once it's reload, bring up a terminal, bring up a second window, switch over to tab layout, and then it gets rid of it and it makes it look like a normal tab rather than a big thick thing with the font and all that. It looks a lot more sleek. So over here sets the various color layouts for a terminal, for your default terminal that you have set. Down here is the themes color for i3 itself, so the border you have around here, the border of an inactive window. You can kind of hard to see, but it is there. Here you can set the gaps of the windows. So what I'm using specifically is actually i3 gaps, and it gives you this little gap between the two windows, between the status bar and the sides and bottom of the screen. Without the gaps, everything would just be stuck together and not look very good. So I have gaps, although normally the gaps are a little bit bigger. I made them smaller. I just think it looks a little better that way. Oh, and for the record, you can, instead of having to do super left and right to switch between an active window, you can actually just hover your mouse over whatever window, and that switches the active window as well. Smart gaps and smart borders. So what this does is right now, NeoVim is taking up the entire screen because it's the only window active. If I opened up a second window, you would have the border back and the gaps. But with it being the only window open, there are no gaps or any borders. This also applies to if you're watching a full screen video, even if there are multiple windows open. And down here are auto start applications, so these are just various things that I have set when i3 automatically launches from the login screen. And that was a tour of my i3 GApps config. I should have mentioned that earlier in the video. But I absolutely love this window manager. It's a super easy to use config file. Everything's written in user-friendly syntax rather than C# or Python or Haskell or any other code like that. It's really easy to configure, really easy to set up, and I think it looks quite amazing, and I'm happy with it. And anybody out there looking to get their hands into tiny window managers but doesn't want to jump in full body with having to learn a various language, i3 is a perfect middle ground that gives you a lot of options and control, but without having to really learn a language just to be able to configure your i3 window manager. So that's all I have to say about that. If you liked the video, click the like button. If you really liked it and you want to see more content, subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. See ya!